welcome back to JKLive here at Citizen Television. What a great conversation we're having. It's all about elections and nominations and you being a part of it instead of being told what to do by your so-called political leaders. And that's why we have Steve Ogola here, we have Lillian Mahirizaja, and we have Bobby Mukangi, all of them here to talk about the way forward. The elections are less than 4 months away, folks, and 4 months will go just like that, Bobby. We'll go just like that, we'll come and go, and we'll be blaming ourselves for it. Why do we keep doing that? And we're supposed to be such educated people. You were part of the writing of that Constitution 12 years ago. Do we blame you and your colleagues?
I think we do.
No, I don't think so, because one, we did write what Kenyans instructed us to write, you know. So that's why we always want to correct Kenyans and say that this is not COE's or CKRC's or a certain politician's constitution. It is our constitution, and that's why when you look at the preamble, it speaks very loud to that fact that it is our constitution. And for that matter, whether somebody voted yes or no, you know, at the end result, the affirmative vote was for saying this is our constitution. And I did speak to the issues that we were asked to repair, and especially considering that our process was very much after or inspired by the 2007 and early 2008 post-election violence, and the processes thereafter, the transitional justice processes, you know, the entire Kofi Annan, the late Kofi Annan institutions thereof. And so the Kriegler Commission, as I was saying earlier, did very much look into what went wrong during the 2007 elections, but also the elections, you know, prior to that. Issues to do with the then ECK, you know, organization of elections, the constitutional and legislative framework. And I think the recommendations that were provided, in as much as we were also guided by the previous drafts that had been churned by, and especially CKRC, you know, the so-called Guy draft of 2002, the Bomas draft, and the WACO draft. But so much guidance was provided by the IREC or Kriegler, as popularly known, Kriegler Commission's recommendations. And when you look at those recommendations and the issues that I mentioned earlier and what we have in the Constitution right now, I think unless it's one or two issues that are not categorically spelled out, but those issues, which again came from Kenyans, are properly articulated in the Constitution and also in the Election Act.
But Steve Ogola, real quick, let's face it. Who remembers Kriegler? Who cares about Kriegler? Honestly, I'm asking you an honest question.
I mean, that is a disturbing question. Because we may not remember Kriegler, but we should be able to remember what he stood for. And I think for me, what I've documented as a pressing problem is the corrosive culture of impunity. We need to understand and appreciate that we have a terrible corrosive culture of impunity that makes it difficult for us as a country to move forward. And we need to know the drivers of that impunity. In the context of our electoral democracy, the drivers of impunity, number one, is the personalization of politics or personalization of political parties. There can't be ODM without Raila Odinga. I mean, let's make an honest admission. You need to be a fool or a crook to deny that. There cannot be UDA without Ruto. There can't be UDA without Ruto. And there cannot be Jubilee without Uhuru Kenyatta. Until we depersonalize these political parties, we will remain stranded at the margins of time. The second problem that I think we need to, as a driver, which I consider as a terrible driver, is this excessive use of money in our political processes. The commercialization of politics. Who funds UDA? You know, I think Kenyans need to know, because UDA is a political party deeply involved in public processes. Nominations are public choice process. Who funds it? The money they're going to use tomorrow, where does it come from? ODM. Who funds ODM? Because if it's funded by opaque people, then you can see where the problem lies. And the way money, the influence of money and the corrosive effects of money can sometimes embolden that impunity. Because, you know, why would you expect free and fair nomination, Jeff, when you've come from the corporate world? You want to join ODM that has been funded by party owners. Those party owners will they reward themselves first before they can think about you. So that's a pressing problem. The other third problem, which I think we need to recognize that exists, we have value-neutral leaders. People who they don't mind living in a value-laden, having a value-laden constitution, but they also don't mind not implementing it. In fact, as we are discussing with Bobby, we have forget about BBI. In fact, BBI was trial ballooning a project of antagonizing the constitution through amendment. But I can tell you, Jeff, there is a parallel unwritten constitution that is being implemented very aggressively alongside the constitution of Kenya 2010. And
I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
I mean, we have a constitution that is written and ordained, promulgated and given unto ourselves that nobody cares about except for the optics. A constitution that is celebrated for its political and symbolic value. It feels nice to say that Article 10 talks about our values, but in terms of practical effectiveness, that constitution has been relegated so much to the periphery that the constitution that was repealed may in fact have greater influence than this constitution. The people that are propping the constitution are accountability champions, active citizens, the civil society, public-spirited lawyers, and those are in the minority because the people that control the institutions of government and instruments of power are value neutral. If it works for them to implement the constitution, they will do so. If it stands in the way, they will adopt a parallel constitution, which is the unwritten document that influences policy. You have to ask yourself.
Lillian, I see you nodding there. You're nodding. You agree with Steve there?
I agree with a lot of what he's saying. Because remember, how many years from 2010?
It's been a dozen years.
I was there in the Ministry of Justice then. But what are the gains? And why, and some of those gains, look at the gender principle, Article 27. Why? This is over 10 years. We are still talking about some of those setbacks. So it is exactly what Steve is saying. The value of this document. If it brings value in your way, in certain principles, you carry it along. You put the political will there. If it does not, and threatens your democratic values, so to speak, then you put them in the back burner. And this is what Mwananchi should be championing now.
Yes.
We tried championing for the rights of women. We are even up to now, trying to champion, and allow me this, trying to champion rights of minorities and ensuring that those articles that speak to minorities, minority communities, Article 100, we've not seen legislation.
Yes.
However, we are seeing some little. If you see the political parties' amendments, they talk about having women. So only women. So what about the other minorities? I belonging to a minority community. I know what that means. And then when you look at that, that is now the Constitution in its entirety. Go to devolution. Go to devolution. You have another story altogether. Not everybody has been carried along. Yet Article 10 talks about public participation, inclusivity, and all those beautiful decorated principles that we have. Article 27 also requires the state to take measures to redress past injustices. Has that happened? How many years? Yet, Bobby will tell us here, we had specific timelines for implementation of specific articles. Those timelines, what's happened?
Gone.
They've come and gone.
And we've failed our people.
We have a parliamentary committee on the implementation and oversight of the Constitution. What have they done? What can they tell us?
Isn't that a shame? Isn't that a shame?
It's a big shame, and I think beyond the shame, because when you look at the Constitution, and now we're talking about, elections, and we need to remember elections are not an end in themselves, because elections are facilitative. Facilitative of what? Of the voice, the political voice of an electorate, of a people. So what is that political voice also supposed to do? Engender. It's supposed to engender, at the end of the day, an improvement in the material aspects of their lives. See? So when we fail the Constitution, when we fail the facilitative political process of people making choice, that is elections, because it is in the people that wananchi elect to go and serve in the institutions of representation, who eventually decide also through vetting and other processes, the people who are going to head the administrative institutions. So if we get the game wrong right from this process, we mean that we are abusing the sovereignty of people. And at the end of this entire cycle or line is what we are seeing right now.
Yeah. Steve, you were mentioning a moment ago, thank you for that, Bobby. A moment ago, you were defending the IBC, right?
Yes.
Everyone's been asking, is there a voter register? And how clean is it? We were promised that. You're defending them.
I mean, Kenyans must stop being lazy. Because IBC, this is information that is in the public domain. IBC has already contracted KPMG to audit the voter register.
They're auditing the register now.
Correct.
So why don't you wait for that audit to happen? That's a very short and straightforward answer. I think for me, just to pick up from what Bob was saying, for me, what I consider as issues that need to be addressed, the way they say in the US, Black Lives Matter, in the context of our electoral democracy here in Kenya, results matter. And that discloses another problem, because when you say results matter, processes don't. And remember, when you go to court, and I'm a litigation lawyer, in 2017 election, I represented His Excellency Governor Malombe at the Court of Appeal, trying to overturn the election of Governor Ngilu. We didn't succeed, but we did a good job. And as someone who follows jurisprudence...
If you may say so yourself.
The lizard that fell from the rocco tree. You know the story?
Yes.
It was able to run. Now, here's the thing. There is a terrible disjunction between the courts, between what the courts say and what our politicians say. I can tell you, even those our aspirants that are expressing anxiety around the credibility, transparency, and the purity of our nomination processes, especially the UDA process nomination that is going to commence tomorrow, if they happen to be the ones that are declared the winners, they will immediately sanitize and validate the process and the results, because politicians care about the results. Results matter. Processes don't. Yet in court, processes matter as much as the results. You get? I want Kenyans to know that our politicians and political parties do not care about the process in their internal nomination processes. They care about the outcome, which is the result. Once we know that, I want us to marshal support and block these politicians from antagonizing IEBC. You can't ask IEBC that results matter, processes matter. They didn't matter for you. I'm not saying that IEBC should be complacent, because remember, the jurisprudence from the Supreme Court can maybe summarize. If you read Raila Odinga 1, when the Supreme Court, in a historic judgment, reversed or annulled the outcome of the election, the Supreme Court said three things. One, IEBC must demonstrate competence every step of the way. Number two, it must demonstrate compliance with the law every step of the way. And number three, it must demonstrate openness. So you have competence, compliance, and openness every step of the way. And I still encourage IEBC, and I know they're doing an amazing job, even if Kenyans don't believe it. I believe in their work. They must just watch out, and they must communicate, because after the nomination, the spotlight will shift to IEBC, and politicians, in a very predictable format, will begin to antagonize them. It is not beyond beyond imagination that our politicians will start demanding that even the newly appointed commissioners resign. So IEBC must remain firm and strong. They must know that every step of the way they must show competence, openness, and compliance.
Yeah.
But our political processes at the political party level and our aspirants and candidates and supporters genuinely do not care.
They don't care. They don't care.
They don't care about accountability.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Lillian, when do ballot papers get printed? Do we know? Plus, minus?
Okay, I've not looked at that timeline, but what I know right now, Jeff, is that they've already tendered for ballot papers, and those are materials we call strategic election materials. They've already tendered for that. And allow me to go back to the question of the voters register. I'm also aware that the audit is going on. After that, Wananchi will have 30 days within which to verify their details. Then thereafter, there is a legal process of certification of the register.
But you know, I think, Lillian, you know as Kenyans, right, we wait till the last minute, right? Look at the SIM card registration.
Yeah.
People have been lining up last minute.
True.
So they'll have 30 days to verify?
Yes, the details, yes. Then after that, there's a legal process of certifying. You certify the register for use.
All this before
in the
August?
elections. Yes.
Before August?
Yes. Certification, I think, is 14 days.
Yeah, 14 days.
But you have 30 days to confirm your details.
And I think Justice Odunga said, just to add to that, that this time round, IEBC must make available that copy of the register within the polling stations so that people can know where they are voting. And I remember AFRICOG on 3rd of August 2017 went to court to compel the commission to publish the voter register pursuant to the law, which requires that the voter register be made available at the polling station. So I think what IEBC needs to do is to be sure that people who registered at their nearest polling station can verify their details within that polling station. I think that would be necessary.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you, Wabi.
Yes.
So with all these alliances being formed, let's say Kenya Kwanza, the presidential candidate, let's say Raila Odinga, does he run under ODM or does he run under Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Party? With all these alliances, I mean, people are asking.
And you know, at the end of the day, that's why the amendments were done to, you know, create this creature that is known as, sometimes it's a mouthful, you know, you know, the coalition political, you know, party, and there are many questions around its implications on the democratic premium. You know, Kenyans being able, and especially when you disambiguate it to the individual, to be able to participate in political parties, one, whether that is what is envisaged in our constitution, and two, whether these big animals and creatures that we have created add value to that extent. I think, to me, part of it is what you've been talking about, you know, maneuvering and the major political players coming up with structures and maneuvers of ensuring that they have total control of the political field, you know. Well, coalitions, you know, alliances coming together, you know, pre-elections and sometimes even after elections. I mean, that's part of the democratic process, you know, and it's allowed, you know, institutions that in agreement around certain values, certain prospects, and certain interests, I mean, can come together. But I think the other issue, and that's why, maybe to answer you, that at the end of the day, and why these political parties are actually now campaigning under these big banners. I think for me also, there is intention to sort of rebrand And this is also part of the problem we have with our politics, that it is still the old organization and mobilization parameters, which means it's the same old faces, the same old names, but they have known that, 12 years into the game, they have to come and do what you had asked earlier, come and confuse wananchi, come in different colors, come under different banners.
But it's the same old.
But it's the same old. So where a party 5 years ago was appearing in orange, is now appearing in blue. Where perhaps it was ODM, now it is Azimio. Where it was Jubilee with Asili or URP, now it has been turned into UDA, and the colors have changed. But when you cut beyond that, you ask yourself why this new political creature? Why is a campaigning being done around these new brand names? What is the premium in that? And to me, I think that is what is happening. That we need, if we come back with the same clothes, with the same colors, wananchi are going to be very quickly going to identify that we're the same people with the same old message. Yeah. And so now, because, and again, politics now has become a game of image. It's a optics, as Steve said earlier.
What's that expression they keep saying? Is it different forest, same? What is it?
Same monkeys.
You said it. I did. Let's go to the magic wall and see the reactions. Dan Alila says, ask Steve Ogola whether it's constitutionally acceptable for parties to use electronic gadgets, which are not physically verifiable, why are parties not sourcing IEBC services and expertise? I think you touched on that with the Turkana lady, right? But go on.
I think right now it sounds I would describe it as of dubious legality, because using electronic voting per se is not illegal, but you need to have a legal framework for it, for it to be permissible. You can't just ambush party supporters with a gadget and they doubt the integrity of the vote that they have cast. Who is going to receive, are they going to be preserved? Who's going to tally and announce? And how do we verify that these gadgets are not? So we needed regulations for electronic voting. If ODM did not have electronic voting regulations, then I can tell you, if that was challenged in court, the court would not hesitate to declare the process as an illegality.
Caleb Mwalimu says, can the lawyers, especially Bobby Mkangi, opine on whether an impeached governor should be cleared to vie in subsequent elections? Let's start with that.
We're actually discussing about it in the sidebar before this. And when you look at Chapter 6,
Chapter 6 does not exist. Come on. Chapter 6, I mean, forget about it.
It's a point of a platform.
Principle.
But this is a person who has been removed from office through prescribed, procedure and norms. Yeah. And so technically, they should not run.
They should be disqualified.
They should be disqualified. I know the technicality is the argument that the disqualification must be optimally arrived at, meaning the processes of review or appeal must be exhausted. So the question would be, at the point of these people approaching the clearinghouse, which is IEBC, what is the fact? Were they removed from office or not? And I think this is what IEBC has to make a call.
I saw Lillian there. Go ahead, Lillian.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Article 75, Clause 3, it is straightforward. If you've been removed from office as a state officer, then you are barred from holding public office. You are barred.
And yet there they are.
Yeah, it's clear.
Looking at them, eyes wide open.
They're running for amusement, yeah? I mean, they're running because they can. But I think,
running because they can.
I think Sonko, the decision by Sonko and Waititu to run is a very strong indictment on the value system of Honorable Kalonzo and Deputy President William Ruto. Because if Kalonzo wants to tell us that he believes in a coalition that believes in the rule of law, if there is an express provision of the law that says once you've been impeached, you're no longer eligible to run for any elective office, and he permits Sonko to run on wiper ticket, I think that's a sharp contradiction. The same goes for Governor Waititu. Anyway, Jeff, as sure as the Lord lives, and for those who don't believe in the Lord, as sure as the law exists, Governor Sonko and Governor Waititu will not be on the ballot. I think, let me say that for their comfort, so they can continue posturing for amusement, and we will be entertained, but they will not be on the ballot by law established.
Okay, here's the second part of that question, by the way. What is the term limit of a deputy governor who replaces an impeached or deceased governor? Bobby?
It's the same as for the deputy president. If at the time the deputy president or governor takes office within the first 2.5 years of the previous, if it's below 2.5, then the deputy governor who becomes a substantive governor will be deemed to have served a full term. But if he or she takes over after 2.5 years, then they'll not be deemed to have served a full term.
So they can run for two independent other two?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Plus that remaining time.
Yes. Yes.
Good point. Yeah. Zengu Paul says, what did UDA mean when they said they are not a coalition political party, but a coalition of political parties? What does that mean?
I think the law, the Political Parties Act as amended, permits the creation of coalition of political parties, which is like a pre-election agreement, which is a more tidier way to ensure that there is a trust. You see, that amendment was a response to trust deficit among the leaders, which I find quite curious and amusing at the same time, that the people who want to trust with leadership do not trust themselves. They have to create a pact and put it in the law. But a coalition political party, there's this doubtful legality whether Honorable Raila Odinga can run as Azimio One Kenya candidate. Because even assuming that he can, it means that as the coalition parties that form Azimio One Kenya must reconvene and nominate him as the presidential candidate. I would not encourage Raila Odinga to run as Azimio One Kenya, under Azimio One Kenya coalition party candidate. I would rather he runs as ODM candidate because he's already been validly nominated. There will be serious constitutional questions that can slow down his campaign momentum if he attempts to run as Azimio One Kenya political coalition party. Personally, I do not see that there's a reading of the Political Parties Act that permits the creation of a coalition political party. Because what would be the rationale, Jeff? I mean, the law, here's the thing. The law is not removed from common sense. Neither are judges immune to reason. Why would you create a party and then create a coalition party? To what end? You see, it makes sense to create a party and then a coalition of parties working towards a common agenda. I think let us not test the water with both feet. Raila Odinga must run as an ODM candidate. He already has the assurance of those 23 plus political parties that will support him. If he runs as a coalition party candidate, his campaign may be slowed down or maybe even fatally affected if somebody goes to court and the court decides. And this court has shown us that it has the capacity to pronounce itself without caring about the unintended consequences.
Is that the same thing with Ruto and UDA or Kenya Kwanza?
No, yes, and Ruto is running as a UDA candidate, which I think, to be honest, I don't necessarily pander to one side, but I find Kenya Kwanza more organized, both politically and in terms of legal strategy. They seem to be 2 steps ahead of Azimio One Kenya alliance, and they may be collateral beneficiaries of the other political divides, strategic blunders. Remember on 10th of August 2017, Raila Odinga abandoned halfway the fresh election. And it had consequences, hoping that, because there was someone who was reinterpreting the law, that if there are only 2 candidates and one fails to run, there'll be no election. But there was an election, Uhuru Kenyatta was declared president, the Supreme Court validated that election, and then it was, as they say, premium tiers. So I think let's not test waters with both feet. You don't know how the courts will decide. The advisors of Raila Odinga must tell him to run as an ODM candidate.
Yeah. Lillian, I see you nodding there. Huh? You agree. All right. Youth president, that's what he calls himself. He says, kindly ask us independent candidates why the, is that IEBC probably, decided that we must collect ID copies for our supporters. What does that mean? Collecting ID copies for the supporters? Yeah, I don't get it either.
I think there is a notice that was given out by the Registrar of Political Parties on requirements for independent candidates, and they are supposed to write a letter to the registrar seeking clearance,
Right.
and they are to give a copy of the national ID card or their valid passport.
Right.
And a notice, sorry, I have to read this
No, it's
because,
okay.
it's quite big. A notice of resignation in the form of a letter as submitted to the political party that they are resigning,
Right.
remember? And this applies to those who had been registered in the party. A political party membership status printout that has been generated from the ORPP on membership service on the eCitizen platform. And this shall be available upon conclusion only of the verification process of membership. And at least 5 proposed symbols in order of preference, each symbol to bear a name, and then the last requirement, the symbols to be submitted in electronic format and printed in color. This is what the Registrar of Political Party gave, this was when, 29th of March. So I think there must have been a confusion, or maybe he did not understand the requirements from the ORPP.
All right, you heard that. Thank you for that clarification. Robert Kiberenge is asking, if IEBC spends, let's say, what, over 45 billion shillings on elections in 23,000 polling stations, how can any party afford primaries in even a quarter of the polling stations? I mean, it's ridiculous.
I think, first of all, we have about 42,000 polling stations, and IBC, IBC's budget for this election is about 40 billion. Treasury had released 26 billion. There was a deficit of 14. I think recently they released 8 billion. I don't like the way money trickles to IBC, but it flows generously to BBI. I mean, we will debate that at another time. But that money doesn't necessarily go into election. No, remember, there's personnel recruitment and so on and so forth, printing ballot papers. Kenyans should not blame IBC for having what looks like a huge budget. When you have a trust deficit, trust cannot be litigated, it can't be legislated, but it can cost you money. You want additional security features in a ballot. If IBC says, can we print our ballot papers here? Politicians will be the first to say no, print them abroad. It comes at a higher cost. So, and so on and so forth.
And it's ridiculous. Yeah. You're right. Sirone Chason says, professionalize their affairs. Clearly, a lot of important electoral milestones are never planned long enough, partly because political parties management is not separated from politics. Serious parties need to invest in program managers and avoid ad hocs. Was just saying that, Bobby. That's what you were saying.
The parties are ad hocs in the first place.
Yeah. And the party is the individual.
Yes. So how do we, unfortunately, expect them to operate in a going concern sort of way? So
are we ever going to mature as a democracy? Is it going to take another 100 years? I mean, it took America what? 240?
And they're still struggling.
And they're still struggling.
Yes.
So how long is it going to take us?
I mean, we have to keep struggling. As Steve had said earlier, we have Wananchi themselves to take up the mantle. You have civil society, public-spirited professionals, amongst them, lawyers, who, in as much as may feel you're in the minority, it's when you look at the history of many countries, it's that minority, it's those individuals who keep pushing and pushing relentlessly and incessantly that eventually bring these changes. I mean, we're talking about the Constitution in 2010. We got it in 2010. Look at the journey that we took. To look at the individuals and how much they suffered, you know. And that at the moment they're in the minority. One to, you know, you could count them on the fingers of your hand. But they kept pushing. And eventually, you know, convinced and showed other Kenyans what they were fighting for and asking for. And the critical mass was eventually created in August 2010. So in as much as we may have these challenges which feel or drive the spirit of you know, fatalism to many Kenyans, and in addition to that, and coming to the point I was making about the material aspects of Kenyans' lives, you know, and the journey of the implementation of this constitution, and issues to do with whether the livelihoods of Kenyans have improved or not, and whether a promise of a new political, democratic, and even constitutional dispensation can affect positively their livelihoods. I think that is what perhaps makes many Kenyans feel you know, apathetic and fatalistic around politics. But we have to remember that you know, it's the drum, we say here in Africa, the drum that is played, keeps being played, that people dance to. So we have to keep playing this drum, and people keep dancing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lillian, at the end of the day, is there hope? Is there hope that one day we will be able to enjoy the fruits of what we, the people, are all about?
I think it's important that we, you know, we divorce politics from some of these processes. Like what we are saying now, IEBC, you know, doing its work, and the politicians doing their thing. But you'll always find that there is a way in which they find some fault, whether real or perceived. And remember, in elections, it's about public perceptions and public expectations. The politicians will always raise the public expectations and hold IEBC to account. We are looking at nominations that are being done with gadgets, as you saw, gadgets that are not, you know, verifiable. But we want to hold IEBC to account on what is in Section 44 of the Elections Act. Simple, verifiable, and all that. Yet, we just want to give a gadget so that if there are any mistakes, we can ride on those to prevent the will of the people. So we have a long way to go. There are a lot of reforms to be implemented. Remember, it's a journey. We have hardly implemented a lot of the things that are in the Constitution. And when you look at, like I was talking about devolution, when you look at devolution itself, you wonder, why is it that some counties are doing so well and others are just lagging behind? Aren't we on the same page? Aren't we using the same constitution? Why is it minorities will always be left behind? Yet, we are talking of inclusivity. So when will they make those steps forward? Yet, when you look at public finance, you'll see all those good articles. Is it 2 or 4, 2 or 3, you know, steps which are supposed to bring everybody closer to the cake. Yet some of us, I'll give an example of Migori County where I come from. I think the people of Kuria have been taken back even worse than where they were.
That's true.
Yeah, long before devolution came. You know that, Steve. So why is it those communities will keep crying and others are making strides? Eh?
Yeah.
I just saw a message from a friend, and they were saying, hey, somebody is complaining here. They've been thrown to a school, Moi Nyabohanse, and that is in Kuria, and that's our best school. But somebody is saying, what kind of school is this?
No.
Yeah. So when will that girl in that school look like the girl in Kenya High?
Or Alliance.
Or Alliance, for that matter. Yeah. When will we be not at par, but some equity? When will we get there? Yet, we have devolved structures which are not working. So why can't we implement this constitution first before we talk about even mobilizing people to vote, yet they are being used as voting machines? Why?
Why? Absolutely. Steve, I'm going to let you have the last word.
Well, I think, I don't want Kenyans to think that we're fatalistic.
But we are. I mean,
we are pragmatic.
It is what it is.
No, we are pragmatic in our reflection. We are saying that although we have a new constitution, there was a period of constitutional turbulence where we are making honest mistakes. But then now we have transitioned from that phase to another phase of active rollback or pushback, where now the gains that we have made are actively being threatened, but you can see that Kenyans remain vigilant, so there's hope that we can still fight and preserve what we have. I think out of the 4 critical pillars that undergird the Constitution, only one has been threatened so far, because the first pillar is the framework itself. I mean, we're having this conversation in the context of a constitution that exists. That's good compared to Uganda, Tanzania, that don't have the kind of constitution that we have. So the fact that we have a robust framework and that we can protect it, I think that's a score. It means in the last 12 years, we have not interfered with the architecture and design of the constitution. That deserves celebration. So Kenyans must sleep happy. The second pillar, which talks about a robust, independent, and functional judiciary, I think the judiciary has done its best. In under 10 years, it has already nullified the outcome of a presidential election.
Yeah.
It can speak very boldly, speaking power to speaking truth to power and protecting and defending the Constitution. I think that's a plus. In the overall, judiciary is doing an amazing job. Number 3, public vigilance, which is intimately connected to a robust, independent, and functional judiciary. The fact that Kenyans can say, wait a minute, I think there's a problem the way we're being governed. Look at the cost list. The Constitution, the Constitutional and Human Rights Division, and the Judicial Review Division of the High Court is full of cases challenging decisions by public agencies and government ministries and the CSs. It's just that the media never shines a spotlight on those areas. I think we have sufficient level of public vigilance that we needed to support the Constitution. The 4th pillar, which is now a bit polluted or contaminated, is the political goodwill. Ultimately, Jeff, the Constitution will have to rest in the hands of a few who have been trusted with the authority to implement it. There's been a bit of challenges. This administration, the president has not done a good job in terms of showing compliance with court orders, and that has threatened the rule of law, because the rule of law presupposes in the first instance equality before the law, predictability of that law, and that those who exercise public authority justify their actions as having been founded in the law. When there's a decision that you must swear in the judges and you don't swear in judges, I think that's a problem. So I think political goodwill is a problem. But Kenyans, that's not a fatal problem. Government is organized at the ballot, Jeff. There is an opportunity. Professor Wajakoya, my good friend, is running for president. And I think, Jeff, you need to have a conversation with Wajakoya.
Yes.
And other like-minded
We actually did on radio.
You cannot relegate. I think sometimes the media relegates good candidates to the periphery and delegitimizes their voices. Kenyans can't say they don't have options. Yeah. In every election cycle, we always have options. Yeah. We have options outside Raila Odinga. We have options outside William Ruto. You can't tell me that you can't vote for Wajakoya. He's not tainted. Can we then rally support for him if you're tired with Rutos and Railas of this world? So then you can have a government that is close to the ideals exposed in the Constitution. I think for me the way forward is this. Kenyans need a revolution, but not the kind of revolution that your friend General Miguna talks about. We don't need a violent revolution, Jeff. We need a moral revolution that renovates our culture. And Bobby said, we have one of our problems here is that we have a corrosive culture that eats into our fabric. Very fragile fabric makes it impossible to progress. We have to renovate that culture. And that conversation on renovation will happen at the family level. As long as in our families we talk about propping ethnic leaders, and PLO, when he hosted him, talked about ethnocracy. We don't have a democracy, we have an ethnocracy where we are posturing, and it's amazing that after distributing and dispersing power and resources in the periphery, there's still some curious, inexplicable obsession with the center. I mean, what do you want, Jeff? What do you want? Power has been divided, separated, and dispersed the periphery. Go back to your county. I mean, before you ask what the national government is doing, please, can you please do us a favor? Can you please audit the resource management at the county level? You can tell us that you want to put fire at the national level, but your own county is burning. I think that's the way forward.
Absolutely. We're going to have to leave it at that. What an incredible conversation. Steve Ogola, Lillian Mahiri, Zaja, Bobby Mukangi. Thank you so much, folks. We have to keep talking and keep educating our people because we are our own worst enemies. Like we said, we're our own worst enemies. Maybe too much education is a bad thing.
Paralysis of analysis.
Paralysis of analysis. Wow. Thanks so much for being a part of the show, folks. Remember, every Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks for being a part of this. Enjoy the rest of the week, and happy Easter to all our viewers, and happy Easter to all of you.
Happy Easter.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night, good luck. God bless you all.